Not, it's not in your credit card. Do we still have a Rhonda folder? But it's still, I searched the whole drive and it didn't. Oh, okay. I'll just. Oh, look at that.
I have no idea. They had them before I got here. Tommy?
Howdy.
Hi, Tommy. How are you?
I'm on top of the world. How are you doing today?
I don't know. You're going to change your name. It says Holly.
Yes, I just changed. She owns the accounts that we use more often here. So
I gotcha. Good. I understand. That was what Paul and I work from home some occasionally. Well, he does a lot. I don't. But so we got a new computer, and I told the IT guy, I said, give him a login, give me a login, so that my stuff is, I can access it, he can access his, and we're not, because
there you go.
and
Outstanding.
his office. I mean, and I'm going, no. We got. So anyway, we worked that out just fine.
See, you'll check that off then, and what we're going to cover today, you'll say done.
Yeah, well, I tell you what you don't want to do today, and that's call anybody about your Norton LifeLock automatic renewal for $500 that you don't really have, because they start asking questions you don't want to answer and want you to go to a website to log on. So I just got on Norton, and I went, we don't have this. We don't do this. And sure enough, we hadn't used it since 2011. So, that's another one out there.
It's amazing. It's shameless.
Yep. So what I'm going to suggest. Hi, Wayne. How are you? Good. Is that what is that behind you? An airplane? Or
That's an A10.
A bullet holder, whatever you call those things.
That's the 30mm cannon on an A10.
All right. Okay. So Tommy and Wayne, what I'm going to do is, if y'all have anything that you want to share, I have activated the share screen. So you can do that. But the other thing is, rather than me just read bios and things like that, I'm going to let y'all just do brief introductions of yourself so that we can move directly into the presentation. I am going to let some more people in here. And I am not going to start Facebook Live until we're ready to begin the program. So,
Hi, just joining a Zoom meeting here. Are you here for bio?
Yes.
Okay. So here's
Okay.
all the stuff.
Perfect. Thank you.
You bet. Have a great day.
start recording. Okay, Tommy, it's all yours.
Outstanding, and howdy, and good afternoon, and on behalf of Wayne and myself, want to thank all of you for attending this afternoon's conversation about cybersecurity here in the Allen and Fairview area. This has been an effort that Wayne and I have been working with Sharon on now for a couple of years, and I'm really excited that we're finally getting a chance to make it happen. And a lot of it comes, Wayne and I will introduce ourselves, kind of our background, but it's a personal passion for us. It's a whole lot more than just the work we do. And we really, because of our compassion for Allen and love for Allen and the community here, we wanted to do what we could to support. With that, my name is Tommy Berry. Officially, and when I'm not doing this, I'm an assistant director with the U.S. Government Accountability Office, the GAO. In that capacity, I oversee a number of GAO teams that conduct nonpartisan, objective, fact-based, balanced analysis of government operations, specifically in the military, the Department of Defense, in a number of different areas, including cybersecurity, military cybersecurity, and cyberspace operations. Other than that, I'm a proud, happy resident of Allen, and I'm also a very proud husband and spouse of a small business owner. And so a lot of things I'll share with you is actually my perspectives, knowing what my wife has had to deal with in that respect. And with that, I'll hand it over to my partner in crime, and then I will share my screen, and we'll enter into what we're hoping is to be a conversation today. We'll have slides just to kind of help facilitate the conversation, but really would encourage each of you, if you have a question or don't understand something, please feel free to speak up. We can use chat box. One of us can monitor that, or if you have a question you feel is good, for all of us, feel free to speak up and ask that. So with that, I'll hand it over to my partner and friend, Wayne.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Wayne Boline. I've been in here in Allen since 2006. I retired from the Air Force after 23 years where I was involved in various roles in technology. I was an Air Force version of an NCIS agent doing computer crime way back in the early 90s. Since then, I've been working with Raytheon for 17 years, which recently became Raytheon Technologies when we merged. I moved here in 2006 when I transferred from Tucson, and I've bounced around at 5 different locations here in the Dallas area. I've been involved in cybersecurity compliance and policy for Raytheon. My small business connection is that there's a new effort by the DoD to get the DoD contracting community better able to protect their cybersecurity information. And it's going to reach out to everybody who does business with the DoD, regardless of the size. So I'm on the independent third-party board that's going to implement that. And as such, I've been touching base with a lot of very small mom and pop businesses, from husband and wife company that paint based buildings to various small companies like that. So I'm feeling their pain firsthand. I spent a lot of time talking to them on the phone, walking them through what they have to do, making sure that the snake oil salesmen out there don't sell them a load of goods that's not going to help them and cost them a lot of money. So that's kind of my small business connection. And I'm doing all this for free because, like Tommy said, we have a passion for helping people do cyber right.
So with that, we're going to go ahead and share. And Wayne, are you able to? Is everybody able to see that? Okay.
Yeah. So the way we're going to do this is I'm kind of going to kick off and talk about the threat and some of the things you have to worry about, and then Tommy's going to follow up with some basic steps that you as a small business owner can use to help address cybersecurity concerns. So go ahead and hit the next slide. So representation, we're not representing the GAO or Raytheon, we're representing Tommy and Wayne. Nothing officially sanctioned from the company, is just a couple of guys trying to help you out. We're going to talk about basic cyber hygiene. We're not going to get into all the cybersecurity standards. When we look at the attendee list of folks, we see some folks that are from heavily regulated industries like medical with HIPAA, or the financial side from banks and credit unions. We're not going to get into all that. We're going to get into just the basics. And there are no guarantees. You could comply with every known cybersecurity standard and best practice in the world, and you could still have an intrusion. And that's, more than anything, speaks to the skills of the adversary you deal with, whether that's a nation state from a foreign country or just a common criminal who, you've heard the phrase, why do robbers rob banks? Well, that's because where the money is. So why do hackers attack computers? Well, because that's where nowadays the money is and the value is and the sensitive data and so on. Next slide. So this is the obligatory why hackers hack slide that virtually every presentation you'd ever attend would have to have. But the main thing I want to illustrate here is ransom. Ransomware is the late breaking threat that probably is most critical to you as a small business person. Hard to have you raise a hand, but has anybody heard of ransomware, or are people familiar with what ransomware is? Good. I see a lot of nodding heads. Okay, so ransomware is basically where you get a piece of malware, a virus, if you want to call it, come into your environment, and it encrypts everything, all your computers, and basically presents you with a message that says, if you want the key to unlock and decrypt all of your computers, you need to send so many Bitcoins to this address. It's very hard to deal with once it's happened. If you're not doing some of the things Tommy's going to talk about later on, you basically have no opportunity except to pay the ransom. And this affects companies of every size imaginable. I don't know if any of you have the Garmin sports watches out there that my wife and I do. And recently it stopped working. I don't know why. And then I see on the news Garmin got hit with ransomware, shut down the entire Garmin server company, the whole thing, for several days. So I couldn't sync my watch to the app. The app basically gave them an error. To the best of my knowledge, they paid a $1 million ransom to get things back online. So nobody's immune to it. And one of the things the purveyors of ransomware have figured out is, rather than try to hit individual companies now, if you're familiar with an MSP, a managed service provider that's outsourcing to an IT provider, there was a recent incident where they hit one that served a lot of dental offices, and they injected the malware into the MSP, and then the MSP in their dealings with the dental offices they supported ended up taking down over 400 dental offices and shut them down. So it's a huge risk. I think I beat the drum enough there. Next slide. So kind of what we're going to cover are the cybersecurity basics, the threats, what basic cybersecurity hygiene is, and then present at the end some small business cybersecurity resources. Next slide. So this is the basic cybersecurity definition from what's known as the National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST, who puts out a lot of cybersecurity guidance from a government perspective. It's basically protecting electronic devices and associated data information. It's kind of dated a little bit, but still electronic devices is everything from your mobile phone to your fax machine to your computers and so on. Next slide. And this is kind of the complexity of what you get in a modern small business. Everybody has email. Everybody has mobile devices. I sit on several cybersecurity boards at Collin College and Texas State Technical College. And when we talk about curriculum, I've told them for several years, you need to kill basic PC classes because honestly, who uses a PC anymore in the newer generation? I mean, there's iPads, iPhones, a lot of mobile devices, and those are becoming more prevalent, and PCs are kind of dying off in a lot of situations. You may have a corporate website. Most businesses have some sort of social media presence. I get a little annoyed when a business's only presence is on Facebook because I don't do Facebook, but sometimes it happens. Social media is a big concern. E-commerce, online banking, BYOD is bring your own device and office policies. If you maintain your own network, managing that network, backup is critical if you're going to deal with ransomware because you may have to back up from the backed up information if you don't want to pay or can't pay the ransom. And now that we're in the COVID world, remote access is even more critical. I haven't been into the office working since March, and they tell us of the 200,000 people that is now Raytheon Technologies, they only anticipate about 30% of the company returning full-time to the office. So remote access has become very critical for a lot of companies. Next slide. So real quick, we're not going to beat on this too much, but typically your cybersecurity objectives focus on three things: the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of the information it's talking about. Confidentiality is pretty obvious. It's just keeping the information you have only to authorized user, and don't allow unauthorized users to have access or disclose it. And if you're a real estate agent, that may be your marketing techniques you use or your customer list, things that you wouldn't want competitors to get into, or sensitive data such as usernames, passwords, credit card information you use in dealing with your customers, whoever they may be. Next slide. Integrity gets into unauthorized modification. This could be anything from having an intrusion where somebody gets into a spreadsheet and modifies the information for nefarious purposes. It could be something, as the example says, they're altering payroll information so that when you pay somebody, it goes to somebody else's direct deposit, or using what I call a man in the mailbox attack, where somebody goes to one of your suppliers, attacks them, gets in, takes over a mailbox, sends you an invoice, but instead of paying the account you typically pay, it goes to another account, and you don't know it, the vendor doesn't know it, but the money goes to the wrong place. It's commonly called an escape. Availability is critical because if you don't have your computer resources, how can you conduct your business? If you are all online, or you're a real estate agent that has everything online, your customers can't get to listings, you can't update listings, you can't do anything. Imagine what would happen if cellular went down and suddenly no cell phones work. That would be huge. It happens from time to time, it's pretty rare, but imagine if you had no access to your mobile devices. Next slide. Small business, big impact. You already have limited resources. COVID has put a lot of businesses completely out of business or on a razor's edge to survive the downturn in business, and that makes cybersecurity even more important. Vulnerability, the attackers have ramped up what they're doing and see small businesses as easy target. Business costs, it can be extremely costly, but then the upfront investment required to protect can be something you have to balance with paying payroll or various other things, especially in the COVID era. And the reputation, once you lose your reputation for not being able to take care of customer data, it's going to be very difficult to bring those customers back. Next slide. Here's some of the cybersecurity threats you would commonly deal with: phishing attacks, ransomware, hacking, imposter scams, environmental events, and silent threats. So I'm sure every one of you gets some sort of phishing email or text from day to day. And this is basically using social engineering to send you an email to try and get you to click on something that's either going to be a fake form where you enter personal information and steals your personal information, or it has a malware link that downloads that information and compromises your computer. These are very common. Gmail does a pretty good job about filtering out those things, but you and your employees need to be aware that if something just doesn't seem right, there's about a 99% chance that it isn't right. Next slide. I think I probably beat down ransomware pretty well, but the main thing to remember here is even if you pay the ransom, there's no guarantee you're going to get the key to decrypt the information and get back in business. And it's often paid in cryptocurrency like Bitcoin. WannaCry was one of the biggest ones in history, several thousand machines it crippled banks, law enforcement agencies, infrastructure. The city of Atlanta has been shut down. City of Baltimore was shut down recently. I can't remember the name of the school district, but one of the ISDs in the area was shut down because of it. So it's again, foot stomp it again. It's a huge risk that you really have to be careful. Next slide. Hacking, just traditional hacking in, getting unauthorized access. Something often I hear from small businesses is, well, I'm not doing anything important, so why would anybody hack me? If you're not doing anything important, then why are you in business? I mean, you have to exist for a reason, so obviously you're doing something important. But at its most basic level, the computer infrastructure you have can be hacked to be used as a stepping stone for hackers to attack larger companies. Because way back years ago when I was working in incident response and we had hackers attacking Raytheon, ironically, they were coming from a furniture store's website in Tennessee. Because obviously they didn't want us to see where they were really coming from. So the technique is to hack low-hanging fruit, computers and systems that aren't being very well protected, and then use that as a staging point to hack larger targets with more valuable things. So again, that's going to cause reputational problems when a large company comes back to you and says, why is somebody hacking you from your computer systems? Next slide. Imposter scams. This is again social engineering where somebody's being an imposter, saying they're from the IRS or the FBI. Generally, this is to add a sense of urgency, or as it says there at the bottom, a penalty that if you don't act immediately, you're going to go to jail or you're going to be fined or something. It's basically, again, to get you to give up sensitive information or click on a link or some way bamboozle you out of something important by putting fear into you. Next slide. Silent threats. These are threats that you don't really think about. Public Wi-Fi. If you're going to do anything on public Wi-Fi, you need to make sure you connect to HTTPS, which are encrypted websites. If you have an email and you're using, try not to use too many acronyms here, but there's an email protocol called POP3, and it's a protocol it uses to connect to your mail server, but when it does that, your email password is open and visible. It's not encrypted. So if you're doing that from a public Wi-Fi, you're at risk. So there's VPN services, virtual private network, that create an encrypted connection to the internet. So they make that public Wi-Fi a lot safer. So if you have to use it, use a VPN or be very careful what you do and do not do. Thumb drives are always a huge risk. If you ever see thumb drives just laying around, you never want to pick that up and put it in your computer. It's a very good transmission method for malicious code, as it says down there. Thumb drives are just very risky. And then malicious code, all your viruses, spyware, Trojan horses, that's all the various types of hidden code in email, attachments, websites, and so on that do nefarious things to your computer systems. And they exist for everything from Android phones to iPhones, iOS, and so on. So don't think anything you have is immune to those. Next slide. Environmental threats is just storms, earthquakes, floods. Water's quite dangerous to electronic devices. So if you're putting things in an office area, try to keep computer systems like a server away from water sources. If you have a 3-story building, you wouldn't want to necessarily put it in the basement. If you have a flood, that's where it's going to, the water is going to find its way down there. And then when you have these disasters, recovery efforts often get scams such as financial fraud to try and take advantage again of a dire situation where you need to act immediately. And then during a downtime, if it's extended, you can lose customers. You have clients who can't wait, who depend on you. So, you have to be aware of what environmental threats are, where you're at, and be ready to address those. Next slide. So I'm going to hand it over to Tommy if there's no questions, and he's going to go over some of the basic hygiene measures. Anybody have any questions about what kind of threat you're looking at? Okay.
And the one thing before I go in, and Wayne, thank you for covering that. Just also another example in our backyard, as some of you may know, in the summer and fall of 2019, the city of Carrollton got hit with a cyber incident. In fact, 20 cities or government organizations in Texas got hit in 2019 with ransomware. And Carrollton, some of their services were still unavailable 3 months later. And they had the FBI working with them, the Department of Homeland Security, and the Texas Department of Information Services. So when you think about it from a small business perspective, I mean, think about, do you have really the ability to survive for 3 months or not? Knowing especially the reality is you probably aren't going to get the FBI and DHS to help you out with your systems. So it's sadly very real, and it happens in our backyard all the time. So this really isn't some kind of far off concept. It is happening in our own communities every day. So since we had no questions about the threats, we'll do is I'll walk through what I call 17. These are the basic cyber hygiene steps you can take. I think you're going to find the good news, especially that you may already be doing a lot of this already. So we're going to do some early wins, hopefully. The other thing also that I think is really important is a lot of times people think of cyber as something special and ones and zeros. And yeah, obviously there is a network and systems that are involved, but a lot of critical steps in protecting your information and keeping your business running includes some very actions you take in the physical world. So we'll walk through those, and again, hopefully this is helpful not only for you as a business owner or an employer, but also even for at home. These are the same. I use these same principal steps at protecting my own home system and laptop. And again, in today's telework community, as Wayne was referring to, it's really important that to the extent we have employees working from home, we encourage them to do this also. So the first step is a very basic one. It starts at your front door of your business. It's having doors and putting locks on them, putting alarms in places, using card keys, and restricting people who have access. The idea here is, again, simply is you put a wall, you put a physical wall, a physical door between people who should have access to your information, to your business, and those who don't. If somebody leaves who has, and you don't have the ability to change key locks or keypads, obviously you would want to change that. My sense is that probably 100% of you already have this, whether you're working from home, you got a front door lock, or your business, you got locks. But again, it's a very critical step and just concept of keeping individuals who don't belong in your business. This helps keep them away from your system as well as your employees. Similarly, along those lines, it's recognizing where do you keep your company's devices? Where are your laptops kept? Where are your mobile phones kept? If you're a bank or you're a credit union, you might have an open lobby because that's where your customers come through. Same thing within the entertainment industry. You might have open lobbies or areas where you have outside guests come in. But you would want to make sure that you have areas where you have your information accessible, that maybe you're doing business, like your accounting, that you have that removed in a different part of the building, or there's a way to isolate those information systems away from where the public or your guests stay. Again, hopefully we're still batting at 100%. These should be. A third one is just log visitors. Again, and you can do this any number of ways. One is if you have somebody who comes into the back offices of your business, is you have them sign in a sheet. You can also use cameras to monitor it. The idea here is simply that if something were to happen to your business or something were to happen to your networks, you'd want to be able to quickly get your hand around what happened. So that way, when you called the Allen Police Department and said, hey, my system has been infiltrated, I got ransomware, they're going to try to quickly, like any criminal case, try to figure out what happened, where it came from, where the point of origin is. And so by keeping logs, this helps people understand who's entering into your workplace. Obviously, these would be not employees, and or the camera does the same thing. Kind of like if a bank robbery occurs, the police, the FBI immediately grabs those cameras, those videos, to go see if they can quickly identify someone. And the logging visitors helps in the same way. This is where we begin to find some creativity occurring. Now, in some cases, we may feel like, okay, we don't need to monitor visitors who come into our places. But there are times when you're going to want to escort or monitor visitors. And especially in those times and events where a contractor is coming to a place where you keep your information system, your laptop, your computer. And I'm going to use my home as an example. I recently had some HVAC contractors come into my house. Now, if I have a contractor come into my house and I say go into the kitchen, if I have a laptop, I will remove the laptop from the kitchen, but then if it's a contractor I trust, I'll let them do their business, and I'm not going to stick with them because they know what they need to do. But if I need a contractor in my office for some reason, or in the HVAC next to my office, I'm going to be there monitoring them because I want to be able to see what they're doing. And this goes to, for example, we see what might see as a harmless tool bag or tool belt. There could be in one of those pockets a thumb drive. And one of the things we talked about earlier that Wayne referred to earlier is a thumb drive is a very dangerous weapon. Someone can plug a thumb drive into your laptop, into your system, and what they are simply doing is injecting malware into your system. They pull it out, they walk off 30 seconds later, and now they have been able to access your system and insert malware onto your system. They can similarly also extract data. So if somebody, if you're not tracking or monitoring individuals who are going to places where you keep your IT systems, you find yourself potentially vulnerable. Another example is the innocent pizza delivery person. They show up, they've got some pizza boxes, everything looks kosher. You tell them to go in the back office to go drop it off in the kitchen. What you may not know is that person may have a laptop in one of those pizza boxes and or another, again, thumb drive. And while they're walking to the back office, they can, again, just simply quickly go into, if it's a commercial building, into a wire closet, or they can access an office in which an employee has walked away from their desk and quickly connect to obtain information or to inject malware into the company. So again, it's about using just due diligence and prudence. If you've got contractors coming into your house where you do business, or your business at another location, if they're going to be accessing anywhere where your information systems are available, and this would include your printers, your scanners, you would want to have somebody oversee that effort. All right, let me pause there because up till now that was just basic physical access. Any questions? All those make sense? Okay. So what we'll do is now we're moving into some of the IT part. And the first thing is limiting access to your network. And probably most of us, if not all of us, use Wi-Fi either at home or in business. And Wi-Fi is a great tool. It allows many people to access and do work at different locations within buildings. And so it's a phenomenal capability for businesses. There's two things I would ask all small businesses to do if they use Wi-Fi, and also if you had employees working from home that had Wi-Fi. Number one is put a lock and chain on it. I mean, password protected. Too often, if you were to look at, for example, Wi-Fi's open networks near your house, you can obviously scan Wi-Fi's that you're able to pick up, and you'll see some that have locks and some that don't. If somebody doesn't have a lock on their Wi-Fi and they don't put a password on it, that means anybody can basically enter into your business or your home network and see information as a result of it. So just like you wouldn't want anyone just walking amok in your house or your business, by putting a password on your Wi-Fi, you're keeping the outsiders away from that network. The second thing you'll want to do is create what's called a guest Wi-Fi. And this is really important for those of you who are in entertainment industry or financial industry. If for some reason you believe it's good for your business model to offer guests access to Wi-Fi. First of all, I would question, is it really necessary? Are they there that long to need access to your Wi-Fi? But if you believe it's the best for your business, you should set up a separate one. You can use the same router. You don't have to get a new service provider. It's using the same internet cable, whatever you use already. But you use a router that you buy at Walmart or Best Buy or wherever you buy your Wi-Fi router, and you make sure it has enable the guest capability. If your current router does not allow you to do this, I would highly encourage you to go quickly invest in one. So again, they're not expensive, and again, what it allows you to do is, like in my house, my family, our business, my wife's business, the kids' television, all their devices run on the family's networks. But when their friends come over, or if I've got friends coming over who are doing scouting and they want access to my Wi-Fi, I give them the guest Wi-Fi, and that keeps them off, again, my network. So those are the two things. Lock your network and set up a guest one if for some reason your business believes it's necessary to offer Wi-Fi to guests. Do not let them use your business's Wi-Fi where you do operations. The next thing, and probably a lot of you may already be doing this, it's a very simple feature on Windows or whatever operating system, is to create individual accounts for each employee as they access. We have now gone from walking through the front door, using key badges, and now we're up and touching a system. And basically, this is important to understand that you want to be able to lock people out. If they get into the building, they shouldn't be able to immediately access your laptop, your smartphone, your printer. They need to have an individual account. One of the important things is if you fire an employee or an employee resigns or retires, this is a quick way to quickly protect them as you immediately disable their account. Very just simple. Again, Windows and most operating systems now have it, so you create limited access by creating an individual account. Very similar to that point is once you've established those accounts, what you want to do is give everyone a unique ID. So in my case, for example, it might be Thomas.Barry or Barry T. You can set up however you want to do it. The important thing here is, so again, in case something were bad to happen, number one, it would allow you to quickly identify where that problem may be coming from. But the other thing that this allows you to do is to also try to kind of control, again, going earlier a moment ago where we were talking about setting up individual accounts, it allows everyone to have unique identification so that way they can access the particular information they need. So an accountant, for example, with the name Thomas.Barry may need some information, but somebody else who has a different user ID may not need to access that same type of information. All right, now I go hit on the whole idea of passwords, okay? And I think all of us know that passwords are important. They're also sometimes can be a burr in the saddle. We don't like passwords because we can't quickly get to it, our information. It's really important that we set up in our businesses, our laptops and our devices where passwords are mandatory and they can't be disabled. They must use both the username and their password. The other thing you want to be able to do is set up for your devices to lock, so that way they need to log back in every 20 to 30 seconds if it's not being used. A reason for that is, think about it, I'm going into the store, I take my device. If I use my device for work purposes, I have real estate clients, or I have, entertainment or other client information on my phone, and I put it down to look at some groceries or some cereal on the aisle, but I put my phone down and walk away. If I haven't set it for secure for 20, 30 seconds, somebody else could pick it up and just say, oh, look, this phone is unsecured. They can then have access to any and all information, all of my financial data information, and create harm and problems for you, your family, and your business. So the 2030 is important. One of the things I want to show here also is you want to change, anytime your business buys a smart, TVs now or printers, understand that all those devices have passwords on them, and they're set by the developer. There's websites out there. So here's an example of a website I went to, Shodan, and I went looking. I intentionally looked for one outside the United States. In this case, it's Taiwan. I found a cable television that is connected to the internet, and the person has not changed their password, and the password is still 12345. And so I would have the ability, if I wanted to go into that person's network and not only access their television, but any other device that's on their systems or networks. So this capability exists. So if you buy a printer from a local store and you connect it to your Wi-Fi and you don't change the password, you potentially have left open a backdoor for an adversary. You obviously want to encourage your employees not to share passwords. The final thing I will share here, you won't find this too often for small businesses, is what's called two-factor authentication. Major companies and corporations use this, but you can use this, for example, if you do online banking. If your company uses a bank, it may offer two-factor authentication as opposed to just password. Similarly, there's a lot of social media sites that now are going to two-factor authentication. Go into the settings, look for it, and try to encourage or require, if possible, your employees to use two-factor authentication on your company's systems. And basically what that does is it keeps someone from breaking a simple password that someone may create by the two-factor authentication. And so let me pause there. Any questions about passwords, user IDs? All right. Now we're talking about the keys. Just like your business has a front door and has keys to it that enables somebody to access your business, your files, your cash boxes, your everything that you have, there are keys to your computer and your network and system. And the keys are kept by an individual who has what's called administrator rights. All too often what happens, and understandably, is we want to give everybody administrator rights just so they can do what they want and they could just not bother the IT person or bother you as the business owner. But here's the problem is when they have the administrator rights, they have the keys to the kingdom. They have access to your business and they can unintentionally, much less intentionally, bring your business to a screeching halt. And so you really want to be careful about who you give the keys to when you're setting up those individual accounts. Maybe you as the company owner are the only administrator, or maybe you have somebody you trust to be the administrator. But just understand that whoever you give admin rights to has the keys to the business and can quickly get access to other parts of the business that you may not want them to. The other thing is this person is also very vulnerable because if they unintentionally open up spam or phishing email and a malicious cyber actor accesses their account, that malicious person now has administrator rights. Not only does Jane or John, who was the administrator, have it, but the person who's accessed their particular account now has it. So by limiting it, you also are limiting the number of people who could potentially be targeted for malicious cyber activities. And this, again, is an example where a salesperson may not need your accounting software, but if you give the salesperson administrator rights, that salesperson could potentially access your company's accounting information. An important part here also is training your employees. For those of you who are more than who have a single employee, you probably had some kind of onboarding process, some training. Here's how we do things. Here's how we do our time and attendance. Here's our security. And we have to remember that just your company's business relies on cybersecurity, keeping the bad guys out. And so highly recommend send your employees to, and when I say send, they can do it from their homes. It can be a 30-minute to 1 hour. There's free and low-cost online cybersecurity training. So I really, encourage you, if you Google free and low-cost online cybersecurity training through NIST, NIST has this site, and NIST isn't offering it. What I'll do is I'll have links to individuals. It's most major companies and federal agencies and state agencies require their employees to go through annual refresher once a year. In the military, I know, for example, they can be locked out of their accounts if they do not, if they don't take their annual training. So this is something that they recognize is a concern, and so I would encourage, again, it's just an awareness training of simple do's and don'ts, and there are free resources available for this. This is where you bring the good guys in. And this is our antivirus software. And I'm hoping that all of you already know what I'm talking about because you maybe already have or hopefully already have an antivirus software on your work computers or your home computers or frankly, both. The way that antivirus software companies work is they're there to basically scan your computers, scan your phones, scan your printers, whatever is connected to that software, and look for the bad guys. It is when you install antivirus software, you've in effect kind of installed detectives or police onto your system that anytime you open up an email attachment, it is scanning it. So it helps protect you when you go to a website. For example, the network that I use, service provider I use, antivirus service provider, excuse me, that I use, will inform me if I'm about to go to a website that I don't know has malware on it, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. But it's really, really critical. This isn't very expensive. You can buy this obviously at your a lot of local businesses here in Allen, Best Buy, Walmart, etc. And so I would encourage you to go and buy. You can also download it off the internet. I think the other thing that Sharon was sharing right at the beginning of this with us was she got a phone call from a supposed antivirus vendor who wanted some information, personal information from her and telling her antivirus software was outdated. And her yellow flag went up saying this doesn't sound right. So rather than give the person over the phone the information, she went onto the software provider's website, logged onto the account, and found out that her account had that particular vendor she hadn't used in a while. So she found out basically it was kind of like a scam that Wayne was talking about earlier. So you do have to be careful that just because you have a antivirus provider, make sure you are still using your login account. Don't give your information over the phone because people do use their names like Kaspersky, Norton, F-Secure to try to spam you and get information from you. And keep this updated. Speaking of updating, one of the things that often a lot of people like to do is ignore the updates on their phone, or they won't update the software on their printers or their laptops. More often than not, usually two things are going to happen with an update. One is the vendor, it might be any one of the apps you've installed on your phones or your iPads or tablets, is simply trying to increase your some kind of user interaction with them. They're trying to give you a new capability. The other thing that they're going to be trying to do is they're trying to close the doors on any back doors they've discovered. These companies are monitoring vulnerabilities. They call them zero-day vulnerabilities. They're working with law enforcement, with the FBI. And so when they are notified or they discover a back door, they're going to quickly find a fix and push it through an update. But if you have an employee or a family member who's not updating their tablets, their phones, their printers, the software, that back door stays open. And so you want to make it kind of a business policy that anytime updates come through, that they are to accept those updates. If I were to spend hours, it'd be talking about this one topic. And it touches base on what Wayne talked about at the beginning. We have seen in time and time again where our adversaries, whether it's nation state or criminals, are going to do what they can to get in, to do harm. Now, if you do these 17 basic cybersecurity steps we're talking about, you're going to make it tougher for the bad guy to get in because there are people who aren't doing these 17 steps. And so consequently, they're going to be the easier targets. You're making yourself a tougher target when you implement these basic steps. But the problem is there are times where these adversaries, as we've seen in recent cyber incidents, are really good and they're going to get through. The question is your business going to survive it? Is your business going to be able to make it through if you get hit by a cyber incident? And so what you want to do in order to do that, and by the way, again, this isn't just apply to cyber attacks, as Wayne referred to, we could have a tornado. We've had tornadoes come through Allen before. Is your information in a position to survive? And so it's really important that you back up your data regularly. You can, the best way to do it nowadays is through cloud service providers. If you're going to do it on a separate network or separate system, you'd want to have a separate server off of your premises. So, for example, one credit union might back up its information at another credit union in another city, or vice versa. And that way, if you're hit with the ransomware, they say, we have locked down your networks. You cannot access it. You can say, oh, shucks, and you can cry and you can and try to fight with them and say, will you please, will you please? In the meantime, you go buy a new computer, and then you go, so you have, if for some reason it's connected to the computer. But frankly, it doesn't matter because you have your information residing somewhere else. So you go from where you primarily get it on a day-to-day basis, and all of a sudden, like, okay, that person has locked down my information on this server that I use every day in my back office, or wherever your server may be. But now I'm just going to switch to another server that has it. So you really make it tough for ransomware, those who are malicious and try to invoke, make you vulnerable to ransomware. It's tough for them to win when you've got that data residing somewhere else. So I really, really encourage you, again, to do what you can to make your business resilient, whether it's to pandemics, whether it's to tornadoes, or whether it's to cyber incident. Getting here a little bit more geeky, but again, really isn't that difficult. It's getting a firewall. Now, what is a firewall? It's kind of that picture in the bottom left shows it's a wall that separates your business from the outside. You've got the web outside, you have viruses, you've got emails, you've got data, and just like your business works inside a bricked structure, whether it's your house or commercial real estate, to keep the storms from the external storms, the rain, the thunder, the Texas, summer storms that we have, keep it on the outside and not affect your business inside your business. The firewall that you can buy, and again, the example here, and I'm not endorsing any of these products, but just examples, is this white object here is called a Cujo. It's about $100 at Walmart. You can get some of these other firewalls like from Netgear and Cisco. And basically what it does is it brings your internet, connects your internet into this box, and then it monitors any traffic coming and going and looks for things that look suspicious. Because you're busy running the business, you don't have time to monitor everyone's email. So this monitors the email for you. This monitors your websites you're going to. You don't know what's going on. Let me give an example of this. We have this at our house. We have a firewall, and all of the traffic comes through this. So when one of my teenagers goes to a website that has malware on it, even I am immediately notified, and they're immediately notified. I get notification on my phone, and they get notified, and they're asked, do you still want to continue? This website has malware script on it. They've been trained to say no, they're to reject it right away. And I immediately get notified so I can call them to get a sense of what website they went to. The thing that's really important here is to understand is your employees may be going to valid websites. But the problem is if the website hasn't been secured, bad guys can actually install some what's called bad script on those websites. And so when your employees or your kids access those websites, not knowing if they don't have a firewall up, what could happen is that script gets downloaded onto your work computer or your home computer. And so it's really important to install these firewalls to keep the bad stuff out. The big thing here, the example here is keep the breadcrumbs out of the butter. So if any of you have ever had kids or a spouse or partner or something where they go to butter their toast and they leave a pool of breadcrumbs in the butter, and it's like, hey, can't you keep that out of this? The same kind of concept happens here is if you have a website, the bottom line, the best thing to do, especially for a small business, is to use a web hosting company. My wife has a web hosting company. And what that does is if somebody were to install malware onto that website, it is not connected to her home business, to her home laptop. So again, if we talk about building a firewall as a brick wall, if you run your website from your business versus a web hosting company, you have basically installed a window through that firewall. And the bad guy can access, the malicious cyber actors can access through that wall. So you in effect would need to put up another wall to block off these individuals from the outside getting to your home business. So the important thing here, bottom line, is to use a web hosting company. If for some reason you feel like you need to host your own web system in your business and or your company requires it, then I would definitely make sure you hire a security professional to come in and set it up, so that way it basically creates what's called a DMZ. It blocks the bad guys from coming into your business. All right, this is the fun part. We all like to, at some point, upgrade our phones from the iPhone 1 to the iPhone 10, the Galaxy 2 to the Galaxy 20. We want to switch our Chromes out. We want to get new laptops, and we either decide to throw them away, donate them, what have you. The problem is your information is still resident in those devices. So, before you throw any information documents away, you should shred them. You should have CDs. You should shred your CDs. Before you donate laptops, if you're going to donate to ACO or any other school district or anybody else, take the hard drives out, take a hammer or give it to a kid or somebody and have fun destroying it. Same thing with thumb drives and microfiche. Destroying it is the best way. If for some reason you want to give the laptop again to one of your kids to use, the thing you can do is take it to a professional person to have it wiped, but understanding that deleting is not enough. An adversary can undelete files, if you will. Finally, the last thing is understanding is your information. One of the important things, or I think one of in Tommy's opinion here, one of the unfortunate things of this environment of cybersecurity the last decade or so is it's been focused more on securing networks and systems, which is good. But the problem is we've lost touch with what the initial intent was, which was protecting information. And what happens in today's environment, especially social media, is we as businesses are posting more and more and more information out on social media. And the problem is we don't understand how much that information can be used against our businesses later on. So the things I would encourage you to think about is, who in your company is authorized to put information out on social media? Who is authorized to speak on behalf of the company? The other thing is we have a lot of great sharing sites like OneDrive, Google Drive, Dropbox. The idea of sharing information is really great, but the problem is if we're using these kinds of systems and they're not password enabled, then anybody who has that URL can access that information. So sharing information can be very critical for your industry and business, but it's really important to understand is make sure that you're aware of what information is going out the door of your business, because you could have the most secure network, but basically are still giving away your information. And as Wayne alluded to earlier, in today's environment of the information age, it is your information that really is critical. It's those client lists, it's that financial information. It is kind of what's happening in the markets and the real estate. That's the information people want to know, and that's what they pay you for. And again, it's your reputation. All right, I think we've got here, and I'll share this with Sharon, but there's a lot of different good information. If you want more information, as Wayne and I said, we were just running you through, just very basics here. But there's a lot of great basics out there by the federal government, by NIST, DHS, Secret Service. And so if you have additional questions or want to get more tips, we definitely recommend you go to one of these sites. And like I said, we can share this information. If you are new to cybersecurity, FCC has a really good small business cyber planner that walks businesses from step one all the way through. And it's a really good tool. So a lot of good stuff out there from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, has some basic essentials to the FCC, NIST, Secret Service. So with that, I will pause and open the, for any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Tommy. Anyone have a question or a comment? I know that Charlotte, you had it one time and you put it in the chat, but
I did, but I have one more question, and I don't know how this actually relates to the whole thing here, but as far as sending information over the internet, you know, sometimes I'm very wary in sending sensitive information over. Social security numbers, for instance. How is that safe, or is that still something you recommend do not send that over the internet, over emails or anything like that? When somebody's asking for social security numbers, or, you know, especially title companies and so forth. I'm in real estate and they're always asking social security numbers for my clients if a contract is in closing. So what do you recommend is the best way to get around that?
Well, there's a couple options. One is always just pick up the phone and call. I mean, I always try to avoid sending my social or anything sensitive over plain email. But then, like with my financial advisor, they have a secure Dropbox sort of thing where you connect to an HTTPS and you upload a document in their case, it's called a vault. But you got to use some sort of email. Encryption's a little too complex for the average person, and it's not a lot of widespread availability. So typically there's different lockbox sorts of options, but at its simplest level, just call. Don't send it on email.
Wayne, could you clarify, like when you say HTTPS, like is there a difference between HTTPS and HTTP, and where would they look for that information? Yeah,
if you're familiar with the browsers, typically if you use HTTPS, it's encrypted connection and it's not in the open, whereas a standard HTTP, there's no encryption, so it's not safe, because I could have a piece of software like Wireshark sniffing the network if you're at a coffee shop using open wireless. But look for that padlock up there. For the most part, most websites these days that are dealing any kind of sensitive information have gone to the HTTPS. Wasn't so common years ago, but now it's pretty common.
any other questions? Just unmute yourself if you do.
I wanted to make one more comment off of what Tommy said about the two-factor authentication, and that is basically avoid passwords on anything where you can. So like if you use social media accounts like Twitter, you can turn on two-factor, where at its most basic, it will text you a code every time you log in, so you don't depend on that password. Or Google Authenticator is an app, and I probably have 15 or 20 accounts that are protected that way. Like TurboTax, you should not be using just a username and password. You need to turn on two-factor so that people can't get in there if they compromise your password. So good advice from a business perspective or a personal perspective is any account that you can log into, look for the ability to turn on two-factor.
Okay, now I've got to go to my Quicken account and see if I can turn on two-factor.
I think so, because they're both into it, and I would be surprised if it wasn't.
Okay, well, that's good news. In fact, or good advice, I have a whole sticky notes here with things that we need to check on here. I mean, I feel fairly confident because we have an IT specialist that sets up everything for us that we're pretty safe, but there are some questions that I had anyway to ask him. So thank you very much for sharing that. I just wanted to let you know that, as I said, we are recording this. I will share the recording not only on Facebook, but also with everyone who attended today. And Tommy, Wayne, if it's okay, if anyone wants to contact you directly, may I share your email address?
Sure.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
I use two-factor to get into my Gmail, so I'm pretty safe.
Okay. All right. Well, good. Well, thank you very much. We appreciate it. Any other comments, guys, before we log off?
I think we're good.
All right. Thank you. Well, we really appreciate it. I know it's taken us a while to get this actually scheduled, but I'm glad we did. Right now is the perfect time to be doing this. And I appreciate both of you taking the time to come on and share with us today.
Great, thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sarah, and thank you everybody for attending today.
Bye.
Bye.